Hello, hello. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you're at, whichever time zone you're in. Welcome to today's live stream. My name is Tyler Hakes. I am the founder and principal of the content marketing agency Optimist and the director of the content marketing community, Top of the Funnel. Today, we have an amazing panel of guests, as you can see, for our roundtable discussion, Core Updates. We're going to be diving into all of the wackiness and craziness and mayhem that is happening in SEO right now, all of the algorithm updates and AI carnage, and answering questions about what's going on and what we should be expecting. Before we dive in, I have a couple of quick requests for you. Number one, if you can, please like this video. It's going to help other folks find it. Number two, hit the subscribe button. We host monthly workshops, live Q&As, roundtables like this on all kinds of content marketing and SEO topics with extremely smart people who share all kinds of great information. So hit that subscribe button and come back for our future sessions. And number two, pop into the chat. Say hello. Tell us where you're from. Maybe tell us your favorite color. That'd be awesome. And number three, if you're not already a member of our community, Top of the Funnel, I would like to invite you to join. It is a 100% free community. It lives on Slack. We have almost 3,000 members at this point. And there's all kinds of awesome conversations, discussions, work opportunities, networking going on there. We just launched a brand new series called Tofu Connect, where we're setting up small group networking and discussions. So those are coming up next week. So you can meet other folks in the industry, connect and grow your network. All that great stuff. So we would love to have you. You can join by visiting yesoptimist.com/tofu. And we'll see you inside. All right. With all of my promos out of the way, welcome to our guests. Thank you all so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Hanging out with friends. Awesome.
Indeed. Sometimes it's shocking that we get paid for this, right? Wait, we get paid for this, right?
Hang on.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. I'm excited to dive in. Let's do quick intros. So if you all don't mind, we'll go one at a time. Just tell us your name and what you do. And how about your favorite dessert? Crystal.
My name is Crystal Carter. I'm the head of SEO communications at Wix. I sometimes explain that as I communicate the value of SEO to Wix users and I communicate the value of Wix to SEOs. I get to do fun things like talk to y'all lovely people and write stuff for our SEO hub. And I do a podcast and webinars and I'll be speaking at MozCon soon alongside Cyrus. I'll see you there. Lots of other folks, lots of things like that.
Cool. And your favorite dessert?
Oh, my favorite dessert. I don't eat it very much anymore, but it's probably cheesecake, like New York style cheesecake. That's a top tier dessert, really.
For sure. Yeah, S tier for sure. Dana.
Hi, I'm Dana DiTomaso. I'm founder and lead instructor at Kickpoint Playbook, as well as president at Kickpoint. So Kickpoint Playbook is our learning platform where you can learn to be a better digital marketer. We have courses out on analytics. And then Kickpoint is my digital marketing agency where we work with clients and take those learnings and apply them to Kickpoint Playbook. I'm also going to be at MozCon along with, this is the MozCon panel. It's actually going to be my 10th time speaking at MozCon, which is pretty wild. I'm very old. All these gray hairs are all GA4 related. And my favorite dessert is, I think, ice cream classic. For sure.
Any particular flavor?
Mint chocolate chip is always like my go-to for sure. Yeah,
that's a good one. Yeah, that is a good one. That's a good one for sure. Awesome. And last but certainly not least, Cyrus.
Hi. Excited that we're all going to be at MozCon. I'm not speaking. I'm just helping MC from the stage, which is awesome. That's how I met a lot of people. I'm an independent SEO consultant that runs zippy.com. Where I spend too much time doing unpaid research onto how Google algorithms work. And sometimes that translates into actual client work, sometimes not, but it's fun. I don't eat a lot of dessert. I don't eat a lot of sugar, so I generally have some strawberries with a little bit of honey if I eat anything. I think the favorite dessert I ever had was the sticky toffee pudding at Gordon Ramsay's Steak in Las Vegas. I was eating by myself, and I took a bite, and I looked at the busboy walking by. I'm like, can you believe this shit? He's like, I know. Anyway, that's all I have to say about that.
That is amazing. Sometimes you just got to share with somebody.
Yeah.
Right?
I feel like they should put that review on the website. Like that's a great review
Right.
of that dessert.
So good you'll yell at the busboy. By the way, I should preface this is you can swear, don't worry.
Okay.
Had that question in the last one.
Thank God.
No worries. And apologies in advance to anybody who might be offended. Cool. Well, once again, thank you all so much for joining us today. I'm really excited to dive in. It has been an absolutely wild last few months in the world of SEO. So we have a ton to discuss and unpack together. Let's just dive in right from the outset and talk about probably the biggest thing on people's mind, which is the March core update. Crystal had an amazing observation today, which is that this core update is still unfolding. Although it is called March, it is April. 44 days now we've been waiting for this thing to be quote unquote done. Crystal, how would you characterize the impact of the March core update so far?
I mean, as far as I can tell, like first of all, like they're remaking calendars. Like, I mean, if they just call it Penguin or Panda or whatever, that would be fine. But if they're calling it the March core update, like to me, I'm just like, there's a part of me that just like it should have ended in March, and it just every time it's not ended, and it bothers me. But anyway, I think that this is probably the most consequential, the most like rocking algorithm update that we've seen in a while. And there's been a lot of volatility across a lot of sectors. And they've also paired this with manual actions and people having like sites de-indexed, and so there's a lot going on all at once. And it suggests to me that there are some big changes that are going to be coming in afterwards, that they're kind of setting the ground for new changes going forwards. Like I don't think this is the end. I think this is the beginning of a different sort of way search is going to be.
Fascinating. Yeah. So what you're saying is that you think this is sort of the prelude to an even bigger shift in terms of search and what we should expect moving forward.
Yeah, I do. I thought Dana was still shaking her head as well, but I don't know if anybody else wants to jump in because
Dana, what are you seeing?
I was having panic when we started this conversation because I was thinking all the changes that's, as Crystal's point, this has been going on so long. I started to panic and thought I missed an update in the last 2 months, but no, it's still the same update. And so many things happened a month and a half ago with AI scaled content, expired domain abuse, and the integration of the helpful content update and more of a real-time ongoing thing shaking out. A lot going on, and you can't. It's really hard to unpack everything at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think part of it too, why it's stretching out for so long is frankly, because I bet you they're in the back, like twiddling with the little knobs of different, and they're like, oh, wait, nope, that was too much. Dial that back. So I don't think they actually have an answer for necessarily like how much this is going to impact things. I mean, I think honestly, like as someone who's been doing this is my 24th year working in SEO, which is wild. But I don't know if y'all were working in the industry when the Florida update happened like forever ago. And this feels like a Florida level update in that it is completely rocking the industry, but it was also desperately needed because one of the things that Florida changed was that it made it harder, as in, more basically doing good SEO actually paid off. Whereas before it was just like, I'm just going to cram this keyword on there 1,000 times. Right. And this is how SEO has felt to me, at least, is like it was getting very repetitive. You basically could just like automate your way through it, when in the reality, like that's not actually what humans want. So I think the March core update makes a lot of sense. I also really like the parts that they included with things like the domain flipping, like what happened with the hairpin and other websites where you could just buy the domain and just go off with whatever you wanted. It's ridiculous. Obviously, Google should never have allowed that. And obviously, there's some innocent folks getting caught in the crossfire for sure for this, and that part does suck. But at the same time, I think that the sites that should be penalized are getting penalized, and the sites that aren't are the ones who were doing it right all along. So it feels correct in some ways.
And I've also heard I've heard other folks talk about this as well, because I think that lots of people have seen that like they one of the things they addressed during this update is like parasite SEO and like those sorts of tactics, like or during this update period, shall I say, because there's a few different updates going at once, but they addressed like parasite SEO like during that time. And I definitely know Natalie Slater was saying online, she shared a really great TikTok about this, that for a while a lot of like good SEOs, people who make good content and make high value content, were going like I mean, am I losing my mind here? Like, how come
Right.
all these people are getting all this crazy traffic, doing tactics that maybe that I wouldn't necessarily recommend? Why are they getting all of this traffic? And so I think, as you're saying, Dana, I think that's a really really astute point that other people have recognized as well. That it kind of feels like a correction for
Mhm.
what users value, because I think that quote unquote good SEOs are trying to make content that is visible for search and is easily searchable and easily surfaceable, but is also visible, like usable for
Right.
users, isn't trying to trick users in some way.
Yeah,
And the one thing
totally.
we haven't discussed yet, to Dana's point, Google is turning the knobs in the background. I'm wondering how much they're turning that Reddit knob and the discussion and forum knob, which dominates search results these days. And which adds a whole nother wrench to this conversation.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
like is Reddit truly the answer to good search? Like I'm horrified if Reddit is the answer, because if people been on Reddit, it's not. Like there's some funny places on Reddit, but Reddit is also like rampant with spam. So if people use Reddit, one of my favorite subreddits is our Hail Corporate, which is just where people point out like obvious astroturfing by brands coming in there and doing this stuff. And it's just like, obviously Reddit can be gamed. Like Reddit is not the answer. I'm sure someone in a meeting was like, let's just use Reddit. I use Reddit all the time. Like that's not too bad.
And I think algorithmically, like maybe it could potentially be that they're pushing it all the way over to see what happens. Like I don't know if you've ever used like sometimes I use filters on camera. So sometimes if you go like, let's see what it goes all the way over, and your nose is like this or whatever, and then you go, okay, well that's what that filter does, because you can see it, and then maybe you move it back to something that's not completely ridiculous. So it could be that they're seeing what the response is and then moving it back. Reddit is tricky though, because like the demographics for Reddit are not reflective of the demographics of Earth. So in terms of like user value, it's not necessarily going to fulfill like all of the queries for everybody.
And it's so American centric too. Like in addition to demographics of Earth, in terms of like age ranges and gender and everything else, like it is so American centric. And I think that that's, again, Google, bless their hearts, they're based in California. And I think a lot of, as someone who works especially in local SEO, sometimes you see stuff that Google does and you're like, have you ever actually left California in terms of like the kinds of things? There's this thing called seasonal businesses. I don't know if you've heard of them. It's just like little things like that are things in other places in the world where you'll have a business that does like pool maintenance in the summer and they do snow removal in the winter, really common in Canada. Google's like, I can't even handle that. I don't even know what to do about that, right? And so that's the kind of thing where it's just like, I really wish that I understand they have offices around the world, but I do want them to get out of this like American California centric idea of what search results should look like, and then really start to think about, is Reddit the answer? No. Is core the answer? Also no. Forums have their place, and I'm not against showing more forum results, but I agree that they've definitely, like, I love that filter idea that they've just turned it all the way to be like, how bad does this look? Like, oh, let's dial it back a little bit. Like, but it's not just them trying this. They're trying this for like billions of people, and that's where it gets dangerous.
Yeah.
So, it's like the MozCon analogy I like to use. We used to do live Q&A where we just pick a random person in the audience, and 1,000 people had to listen to that one person ask a really silly question. And that's what we're doing with Reddit. We're elevating that one guy in his Ohio basement and giving him national visibility by turning this.
And I can guarantee that guy's like, oh, I don't have a question. This is more of a comment.
Yes.
Yeah. Right.
Because I have been that person at MozCon who got that question from that person. It wasn't a question. It was more of a comment, and they talked for 10 minutes. Not a good experience.
Yeah.
I was gonna say the wacky thing about the Reddit results specifically in the SERPs is that like a lot of them are like a post from 2 years ago with like 6 upvotes, and you're like, this cannot be the most authoritative post on Reddit about this topic. Like, how is this being chosen? Like, it just it seems so random.
Yeah.
I think it's really it's interesting times. I'm gonna be talking about Reddit at MozCon, and the research that I have is all over the place. So it's still unfolding. There's a lot. People have a lot of opinions about this, and there's a lot going on there. So it's definitely a fascinating topic. We could literally talk about it for hours.
Right. So we go back to the original question of sort of what we're seeing in the March update. Obviously there's some stuff here around scaled content abuse and, parasite SEO and that kind of stuff. But it seems like the overarching theme is basically they're trying to eliminate a lot of that low quality, very templatized, systematized SEO content, quote unquote. And one of the solutions that they have been tinkering with is elevating user-generated content via Reddit and forums. But it sounds like overall you guys are thinking that despite some of these hiccups and challenges and pain points and laughable moments at the as this is rolling out, this was a necessary change. Anybody disagree with that?
I'm on the fence. I don't, and I can't tell you why, because I don't think the search results have gotten amazingly better since a lot of these rollouts. So, and a lot of people, a lot of good meaning creators have been hurt by these things, and the people who are getting rewarded, I'm not sure they're necessarily deserving either. So I'm going to hold back judgment.
I think that, yeah, I mean, I'm kind of there because I want to see what happens afterwards. I think like, you know, they say in music, like you don't know if it's a bum note until you play the next note, really. Like, and I think that we need to know like what comes after this, because it could be that they're doing like a Marie Kondo, like, does this spark joy? Like, no, yes, like keep it in the SERP, don't keep it in the SERP. It could be that they're doing that, because a lot of the things that we're seeing are punitive. Like they're like, normally with updates, you see like big visibility lifts, but a lot of what you're seeing is people being demoted. And then I think Glenn Gabe was showing that like over the last week they've demoted people again in a few cases, which is just like, that's just brutal. That's just like and I think that, you know, if that's the case, if they're clearing house before they reshape the SERP, potentially with SGE, potentially with other tools, then I think that, you know, we won't know that this is a good update until it's done, which is why like you, Cyrus, I keep going, did I miss it? I keep checking those notifications. They're like, no, we made a new video. And I'm like, I want to see the video, guys. I want to know what's going on with the update.
And actually, Glenn's update was really interesting. I was reading about that too, because I was wondering if maybe they're doing like another, like they're just beating a dead horse at this point to be like, get the site completely out of here. Because I do wonder if they are watching some key queries to see what surfaces once they really punish people, and seeing like, is this more of what we want? But again, like, is this more of what we want is pretty subjective as well. And I think that generally, like, are the results getting better or worse? I don't know if normal human beings who don't do this every single day have noticed necessarily a difference in quality. Like, my father-in-law is always my barometer of like, what are normal human beings thinking about the internet? He's the kind of guy who like Googles Google and then searches for what he's looking for, right? and he was like, these search results are bad. Like, yeah, they are. He's like, I don't want to go to this website, Reddit. Of course he doesn't. He just wants to play poker. Like, this is his goal when he goes on the internet. And so I think for like the average person using the internet, the search results haven't necessarily gotten better or worse. They're just there. And so I don't know if they've been able to solve this issue yet.
That was going to be my next question. Is obviously that has been a common narrative, right? Is that the Google search results have gotten worse and that they are the worst they've ever been. So I would love to get your takes on that. So Dana, it sounds like, well, I guess you said that your relative had sort of a neutral reaction. How have you personally seen the SERPs? Do they feel better or worse?
I don't know. I mean, I think they feel worse than they were maybe like 5 years ago, let's say. But if we think about the search results compared to, say, 20 years ago, they're better. They're also, you know, I think that certainly there are some good changes that needed to be made. Again, I don't know if Reddit and forums are necessarily the answer to these types of questions, which I know we're going to talk about, you know, SGE in a bit, but I think that that's part of it too, is like, is this, they're just dumping all this stuff because they're going to sprinkle in a little bit of SGE here and there. Like what, and it is, my question is like, what is Google's long-term game plan here? Like, what are they actually trying to do with this? Because Google is so beholden to ads that they really have to be careful to not reduce anything that's going to remove the amount of money that they get from ads. Whereas if you look at a company like Microsoft, ads is such a tiny slice of what they do. So they have so much more freedom to just try different stuff. So I am like watching what Microsoft is doing in comparison to what's happening at Google to see like, can this actually go if you're not tied to having to make all this money via an ads product, which is very much tied to the way search results have been for the past, 15, 20 years.
Yeah, well, and we'll definitely dive into SGE because that's obviously the other, sort of side of this coin, and thinking long term about what Google might be thinking and where they're heading. Before we do that, I'd love to give the other folks. So Cyrus, search results, quality, good, bad, worst, best?
Yeah, I think to Dana's point, it's hard for us to judge because we're in there every day. I think for the majority of the sites that I work with, my clients, they haven't seen a huge change. There maybe a 10% difference over the last year, and some of the personal sites that I run, same thing. So I think we have a bias that we're looking at the edge of the web. We notice every odd query when something pops up. I do think, I know we're going to talk about GE later. I think that's been getting incrementally better. I'm noticing that I'm trusting it slightly more, which as a user is awesome. But the search results themselves, I get frustrated with the forum and discussion in my face all the time when I'm looking for something. I don't think Google has nailed that yet. So I don't think these are the worst results ever. Certainly search results are better than they were, 10 years ago. Google has made a lot of improvements, but we SEOs may not be the best judge to answer that question.
Fair enough. Yeah, go ahead, Crystal.
And let's ask an SEO.
I think that the nature of our queries has changed as well, and I think our expectations have changed. So I think that one of the things, and I talked about this, I did a Moz Whiteboard Friday a little while ago about search trends in 2024, and obviously talked about LLMs and ChatGPT and all of that sort of stuff. And I think that if you go to Bing, which I've actually started using Bing a lot more lately, which is very interesting, they've gamified it, and I just love points. And you get points when you use it. So I find it really fascinating. But when you go there, they're like, ask us whatever you want. Here's 1,000 characters or 2,000 characters or something to ask whatever question it is that you want. And I think when you talk to ChatGPT, you go, how do I find a formula so that I can use this on my spreadsheet than Google Sheets that's different from Microsoft Excel and blah, blah, blah. And you write a whole essay to them and they'll give you an answer for whatever you need. You talk into your phone with voice search and you have no character count. You're like, if this has summoning sickness, can I trample with my goblin from Magic the Gathering? And they will tell you straight away. So I think the way we search has changed, and therefore we expect the results that we get to change. And also people are using way more search engines than a few years ago. There's even within the LLM space, there's ChatGPT, there's Perplexity, there's Bing's Copilot, there's, other ones as well, Gemini and things. And they all are a little bit different. And the results that you get are all a little bit different. And I think that Google's trying to be more competitive. I think that you mentioned Bing as well, Dana. And I think a lot of the ways that they're responding in the last year has been because of the challenge from Bing, which, isn't, in a grand scheme of things, isn't very much, but in terms of percentages of ad revenue and visibility and visibility, how many users and stuff those, they count those things. They pay attention to those things. So I think that it's I think the way we search is different and our expectations are different because of the web.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Is that the way that people search, the expectation that they have, the number of search engines they're using is totally different now, right? Yeah, people are you search Google, and then you search Reddit, and then you search TikTok, and then whatever, you use Perplexity, and you're getting information from 20 different sources rather than just looking at the top 10 results and trying to find your answer there, which I think is an interesting change. I wanted to talk about sort of the fallout from this, and obviously the preface here being that, as we have mentioned, we're still in the midst of this update rolling out, so we're sort of judging it before it's fully baked. That being said, have you made any changes or made any recommended any changes to clients or anything like that based on what we're seeing in this update so far, Dana?
No, not at all. I mean, honestly, and we haven't had any clients had negative impacts. I mean, I should knock on wood, when I say that. But actually, one client that we have see positive impacts is companies that are in typically spammy spaces. Like locksmiths, moving companies, pest control, those local spaces where we have clients that have multiple locations. They're always dealing with spammers. I think some of them were relying heavily on AI content, and some of them have clearly disappeared, which is pushing our client up, which is great. But we haven't really seen anything, and we're not changing how we do stuff as a result of this, because part of it, I mean, for us at least, was sitting back and saying how much of this AI thing should we actually take into consideration when it comes to creating content. And I think because we were taking a bit of a cautious approach, I think that has paid off for how we work with our clients.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Cyrus, what about you? Has this update so far changed anything that you're doing?
Yeah, so my entire life is working with clients that have been impacted. A lot of them came to me after the original, helpful content update last fall. And while we've been working with clients, we've been able to stop the slide, not those nightmare stories that, Glenn Gabe is sharing. We haven't seen any significant recoveries, but there have been very specific things we're advising clients to do. First of all is UX. There's a UX component that rolled out last fall. We talk about a lot of ads and things like that. The other is personal experience, demonstrating personal experience with things. We've been incorporating, doing a lot more of that. But one thing that I think a lot of the industry hasn't really explored yet that people are waking up to is the idea of over optimization. Google talks a lot about creating content specifically for SEO. So we've been trying to figure out, what's Google looking at here? Because as a user, it's sometimes really hard to tell the difference between a site that was hit and just a, over aggressive site that's still ranking. And there seem to be some very fine points that Google is deciding on. But that's something that we're just starting to really explore right now is, are we over optimizing these sites, thinking that we're doing everything right in a white hat way. But it's turning out maybe that isn't the case.
Interesting. Yeah, I think, if we go back to the dial analogy, it does definitely feels like everybody has been, pedal to the metal in terms of like SEO for the last several years. And because there's so many proven formulas and templates and processes, it's just been, hey, crank out content. So yeah, that feels like something that would intuitively, be something that needs to be sort of dialed in and corrected for. Crystal, what about you? Have you seen in your work or anyone that you're talking to, any specific changes that people are making in response?
I mean, we've basically, so most of the projects that I'm working on are not being heavily impacted. There's one project that I'm working on that I've seen some uplift on during the course of this, which is good. But again, I think that's something to do, like Dana was saying, that some people are falling out of the SERP. Some people are when there's fewer competitors in the mix, you're just going to naturally, if you're still there, you're going to naturally get some more of that traffic. So I think that's the case. My general advice to anybody during a core update is to stay the course for the moment. You obviously can't have been posting videos of just what to do while you wait for the core update, paint your nails, mow your lawn, whatever. But you obviously can't stop, doing your work. You need to do your work, but I wouldn't necessarily change tactics just now. I think that we have paused with some of the ways we were thinking about AI content a little bit. And just being a bit more nuanced with that. I don't think that Google is absolutely opposed to AI content. I think they love those LinkedIn articles, those LinkedIn collaborative articles. They absolutely love them. They get featured snippets.
Oh, they sure do.
I love them. So I don't think that it's a zero sum game in terms of AI content. I think that I think that like Cyrus is talking about, leaning into that expertise, I think that it should be a question of cyborg content, that you have your expert firsthand knowledge, and then maybe you use the AI to clean up the data, to summarize in certain parts, and that sort of thing. So use it to help you to showcase the expert knowledge. And I think that's really valuable.
For sure. Yeah, I think I definitely think the update scared the crap out of a lot of people when it comes to AI, for sure. That was the main narrative. I feel like, for the first few days or weeks of the update was, hey, Google really, took the hammer to AI here.
Yeah, I have to say, when it was when one of my team members posted about it in Slack, I just wrote in all caps, finally something about this. I was so excited to see that announcement, because it was getting ridiculous. And you'd see these case studies every day. It'd be like, I scraped this other competitor's website, and I copied all their content, and then I added some fairy dust, and now I'm outranking them. And it's like, how is this a real thing that we're doing? This is not how marketing works. Yeah.
I think the people who never got invited to the crocodile party are kind of feeling a little better about themselves. I never got invited to the crocodile party.
No, I never have been invited to the crocodile party either. And and if people don't know what we're talking about, by the way, I think it was a Verge article that was right before Brighton SEO. So it must have been October, November last year. Yeah. And it was the idea that there was a bunch of SEOs at some crocodile party or something, but it turns out it was actually an affiliate party. It wasn't a bunch of SEOs, but apparently for The Verge, the line between SEOs and affiliates is very thin. You know, not all SEOs are affiliates.
I may or may not have been invited to a crocodile.
Oh, I knew it.
Cannot confirm or deny.
In my defense, I think they just invited me as a novelty. So
Okay, but did you go to the crocodile
Yeah,
party?
right. That's what I want to know.
eh. It's not as bad as it sounds.
Cyrus is there with the red cup, like, yeah.
Here's my commemorative mug from the crocodile.
Yes, exactly.
Taking pictures next to the Lamborghini. No, I'm kidding.
Oh boy. Oh my. All right. So it sounds like maybe some incremental shifts happening for sites that were clearly impacted by the update, but overall, we're all in the same boat that like, hey, we don't really know what's going on here, and we're not really changing our strategies significantly at this stage.
I think, yeah, stay the course.
Unless you were severely impacted, and it's all hands on deck. Those sites are definitely working to do whatever they can, grasping at straws to try to level the boat.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think that in times like these, if you are having that situation, because I've had clients who've had a bit of a rocky time with an algorithm before, like sometimes it's a question of like, is the website the best place for that content? Maybe there's other channels that you can use that might help with that. Like maybe you should be thinking about additional channels as well.
Yeah, let's talk on the flip side. Sites that have seen benefited from these. I have an e-commerce site that has a blog. It's a how-to construction sort of deal. They saw huge increases after all these recent updates. Travel sites, we've seen a lot of decline in travel sites. You know who's winning? Rick Steves' forum. That thing took off like 1,000,000% over these updates. So I'm sure everybody there is just excited as heck. So there are some business models and some websites that they're definitely benefiting, and they are often real world websites with a lot of trust signals that don't rely on a lot of ads and affiliate. Those sites seem to be doing really well, and maybe that's a hint to the direction that some sites should be going.
Shout out to Rick Steves.
Yeah.
Throwback. Rick Steves is that dude.
He's Canadian, right?
He's got some great travel tips.
Or no, he lives in Seattle. Yeah, almost Canadian, honorary Canadian. If you live in
Canadian,
like Seattle and Minnesota,
we're just giving away Seattle now. I love that. So if we take a step back from sort of the March update specifically, is that generally your approach to algorithm updates? Like, let's say Google announced a new algorithm update tomorrow. Dana, like, what steps are you going to take if that when that news breaks? Anything?
Most of the time, I have to say, like, I feel like I've either been like really cautious or really lucky in my SEO career. Like, I really haven't had any algorithm updates that made me go, "Oh crap, stop doing that immediately." I think the only one, and I looked through actually a whole bunch of archives to be like, which one impacted us? And we had one client who was impacted from I'm trying to remember what it was called. It was like the proximity update or something like that was done, vicinity update. That was for local SEO. And that impacted companies that mostly did kind of in-home services. So again, like moving companies, pest control companies, even though they had a physical location. And we had a couple clients who were negatively impacted by that, but they were able to recover eventually as well. And that's really the only one I could think of that was like, okay, we need to rethink how we're doing, local SEO and specifically for these clients. But local SEO is also like kind of a weird subset of SEO that feels like 5-10 years behind the times. So who knows, maybe 10 years from now, we'll be talking about, AI for local SEO. But in the meantime, like, I really don't think there's been much. So a matter of it is just making sure as well before the algo update comes in and you have to scramble to make those changes, like really thinking about your SEO strategy. And part of that think before you recommend, to your boss, your client, or internally to start to deploy is this going to burn us? Like, am I doing a one weird trick? And if you live your life not doing that, I think that generally you like have better blood pressure and not have these panic updates happen.
Yeah. Unless you're Cyrus, then you're on the other side of the coin, and that's when your bank account starts filling up. It sounds like.
Yeah. This to Dana's point, I've also lived a very comfortable life, not hugely impacted by Google updates. And in the past, Panda, Penguin, a lot of the big ones, you generally knew in advance when you were breaking the law on the wrong side of things. You have spammy links, your site is pure spam. The more recent updates, you're going, what? I'm not quite sure what I did to upset the
Mm.
Google gods in this case. So it is a different beast, and I don't know. It just feels different in a lot of ways.
That being said, though, in your experience so far, do you feel like you've found some of those common threads? Like, is there sort of an underlying reason that you've discovered since working with these clients for why they have been impacted or punished?
Yeah, well, I like to talk about, risk factors. There's no smoking guns, but there are risk factors. If you're an ad heavy site, if you're producing a lot of listicles, things like that. If you're using stock images, we did a study where when I say stock images, I mean any image that is not original. You got it from a stock site or you borrowed it from another site. That was one of the highest correlated factors with decreased rankings in our data. So there are some things like that we're working with clients to try to correct, and they seem to be working. Yeah, adding more personal experience to the post, sometimes cutting down. I think we had information gain on this list of topics to talk about today. Sometimes cutting, when you have a huge long post, focusing the content a little more seems to be a positive strategy. So there are some very specific things. I don't have a list to go through. It it depends on different clients, but yeah, we are trying to target some different things with some of the clients that have been hit.
Interesting. And what about you, Crystal? What's your general experience or action item?
So generally speaking, like if Google announces an update, like, and Dana as an analytics person, I'm sure you do this as well. Like I always date it. Like if you in UA, lovely UA, you could add a little annotation.
I do want to say that I think maybe annotations might come to GA4, but if not, what you should do in the meantime. Look, all I know, I saw something on LinkedIn and then it got deleted, so I don't know, maybe, but what I will say about annotations is that don't stop doing them. Put them in a spreadsheet, and there is a great post. I can share this later if people want to know about how to mash together a spreadsheet with Looker Studio so you can make your own annotations in GA4. So I do recommend doing that. Please don't stop tracking annotations. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for the PSA. So annotations, there's some tools that allow you to do it as well, and some of them annotated as well. But shouting out posts, I have a post on how to respond to Google algorithm updates. As soon as there's an algorithm update, always date the changes and watch to see when your site may or may not have been impacted, because sometimes it'll roll out on a Tuesday, but you might not see an impact until the next Tuesday or something, especially if you're not in the US, because they very often roll them off first in the US and then later in other spaces. So it's worth making a note of that and just paying attention if you start to see anything going through that. And I have a whole thing that I go through in terms of looking at which things may have been impacted and which things haven't. And also, if you have been impacted, a lot of times Google says it's the whole site, and very often it is the site, but it's not always every single thing about the site. Sometimes it's one particular thing about the site. I've definitely had it before where I had a decrease in a few things, but I looked at all of the keywords that were affected and they were all stuff I shouldn't have been ranking for in the first place. They were just completely unrelated terms that were nothing to do really with my site, and they just put that traffic somewhere else. And so if I look at my net rankings, I lost rankings. If I look at my net traffic, I lost rankings, but my click-through rate went up loads, and the actual traffic that I was getting was better quality. So sometimes it's worth looking at exactly what was impacted based on the dates that the things changed and all of that sort of stuff. So I think you should have a process for evaluating what's happened, and also look at your competitors as well, because sometimes it's your site, sometimes it's your vertical. Right. Sometimes your whole vertical has been impacted because Google is doing a new thing with jobs or with travel or whatever. So have a look at that. And also check the SERP. I always say check the SERP because sometimes Google has just completely changed the SERP entirely. So in the days of COVID, for instance, they would, they'd be like, right, nobody can rank for face mask anymore because we've changed that SERP entirely. I know, and in health spaces, sometimes they'll say, right, we're changing around the heart attack SERP so that it's only CDC and WHO and the Heart Foundation or whatever. So check the SERP as well, to make sure that it's not necessarily, before you start searching your soul for what you've done wrong, have a look at what's actually happening on the SERP, because if they've changed that might be why your visibility has changed, and no amount of backlinks is going to get you on the unless you get a backlink from the CDC, like is gonna change where you are. If you're just on, if they put you on page 2, they put you on page 2. If they've just put nothing but health people there, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had Kevin Indig on in January talking about algorithm updates, and that was one of the things that he mentioned too. Was a lot of everyone jumps to, oh, I lost rankings, I just got to like go re-optimize my page or whatever. But yeah, a lot of times there's these much bigger shifts that are happening, and I think we're seeing that more and more, right? As Google rolls out these different SERP features and things, it fundamentally changes the landscape of the SERP, and you may just not have a chance at that term anymore.
Yeah. And I think actually that's a great point, and something that we actually worked with a client recently who had this problem where they suddenly were seeing less SEO traffic. And we were like, it's just this set of pages, what's going on? And they actually use Stat, which is a Moz product. And because they were tracking their rankings, we could look back at the SERPs and say, oh, you know what, this site link changed, or this page is here that should not have been here because somebody turned off the no index flag on a page that should have been no index. And now it's showing up and it's taking traffic away from these other key pages, for example. So really having that, like, even if you can't afford a tool like Stat, like just take a screenshot whenever you Google some of your key phrases. Like if you're just yourself and you don't have budget for these bigger tools, take a screenshot, save it in a folder. You'll be happy later that you did, because then you're remembering exactly what is showing up in the SERP for, those specific searches. And the other thing too is that, when you look at stats from Google Search Console, which is not 100% correct ever, just keep that in mind. When you're looking, the two stats that I pay the most attention to are impression and click-through rate, because click-through rate does indicate like maybe we're now showing up for stuff that's more relevant, because you could be ranking for weird stuff. Like our agency website ranks for team building activities in Edmonton because we wrote about doing a team building event. We don't sell those things, but we rank for it. If we stopped ranking for it, it'd be okay. But again, we would see less traffic coming in. So, is that good or bad? And then for impressions, keep in mind as well that if people do use rank tracking software, that will show up as an impression in Google Search Console. So if you're suddenly seeing a whole bunch of like more impressions showing up for something, maybe just your competitor turned on the rank tracking software or something. So keep that in mind too.
Fascinating. Yeah, for sure. One of the things that I feel like has become more important than ever is like communicating with, your stakeholders or your clients or whoever about these changes, because as we're, yes, as you said, maybe Ahrefs is showing, a giant drop in keywords, but those keywords didn't matter. Or yes, our rankings dropped today, but they might come back tomorrow. Any tips from anyone on how to kind of communicate and have those conversations and sort of set expectations?
Yeah, I do. So I think a lot of SEOs, and I've made this mistake before for many, many years. You deliver SEO reports, and there's statistics from your analytics or your rank tracking software. I think the most valuable thing you can do with any client is to take your top search keywords and walk them through Google. Like, I'm a user. This is what I see when I Google this term. This is all the Google features that are overtaking the SERPs. Here's your competitors. Here's discussion in forums, and that really starts to get them to understand and gets buy-in for some of the changes you may want to recommend. And you start thinking it from a business perspective. It's not just about what my rank is. I have a real world situation here, and I have a sea of competition and SERP features that I'm competing against. So that's my tip of the day.
Yeah. And I would say too, like, stop using tables for the love of God. Like, nobody likes tables as much as SEOs like tables. And there's really nothing more boring when you're presenting to someone who doesn't do this for a living than being like, look at this 50-page Excel sheet. Like, no one wants that. Nobody asked for that. Right. So please stop using tables. Put it in, like, one of my go-tos is to, when I'm talking about like rank changes and everything else, like, make a bubble chart, and you have clicks and impressions and the size of the bubbles, the click-through rate, and you can look at like where people are sitting, or even, where the position is on average, and like that, show that kind of information, because that is so much more effective than showing things in a table. And just try not to, basically, I think that people think we're getting paid by the pound when it comes to reporting. Please stop. It's not. Like smaller reports are better. I've been saying this for years. This is what I talk about at MozCon again this year. It's actually 10 years ago I talked about reporting, and I'm back again. And part of it is like, stop using tables, just like small, impactful, and also run it through AI and make sure it reads at a good grade reading level if you're sending an email, because sometimes we can get into the real technical weeds of things. And again, it's not necessarily the best way to communicate your value to your clients or to your boss.
Yeah.
100%.
Absolutely. I think that like being transparent with the visuals, like Cyrus is talking about, being transparent with like making sure that humans can read it, not just SEO geeks and SEO like folks like ourselves. Like making sure that like that anyone who looks at that report can understand what you're talking about is really, really useful. And I think like dynamic reporting is really, really useful. So Looker Studio is useful. There's some great tools that have dashboards as well, so that the clients can see progress as you're going along as well. And I think that certainly when I started out as like a junior exec with clients, I'd be like, here's your report for March. And then my next touch point would be like, here's your report for April. And like, that's not enough. I'm sure other people realize this as well, but like talk to them like as the things are going, like as you're doing it, even if it's just like, please can I get your approval on whether or not we should use the picture with the green or the picture with the blue or something, so that they know that you're involved and that you know you're working on in the background. And I think with algorithms and stuff, with all of that sort of things going on as well, like, hey guys, this algorithms updates happening, you might have noticed. And even if it's like that you make sure that they follow you on LinkedIn so that they know that you're paying attention to that. That sort of thing, that can be useful. That can be like a sort of low stress touch point that like, hey, algorithm happened, and then they know that that you're on top of that and you're paying attention. And that's really useful. But I think like keeping the conversation open, like Cyrus and Dana are talking about, is absolutely crucial. Because if they don't trust you, then like then when if things do go badly, or if there is a drop in visibility, then they're not going to trust you that those keywords don't matter. They're going to go, oh, I don't know. And you're going to know it's not a big deal. We will be fine. Like, we'll be fine. We got this. It's okay. So you need to communicate for that.
100%. Yeah, I mean, so much of it is just communication, and I think like that's maybe something that folks forget, right? Is that it feels like over the last 5 or 10 years or however long, SEO has really matured into a much more serious piece of marketing that people take seriously, and the CEO might care about it, but the flip side of that is that you've got to be able to translate this like nerd SEO wonkery into executive reporting and things that make sense to people who don't understand these concepts at the granular level.
Yeah, I think about it like if you're a web developer or you're a developer, you're making an app, you're not going to go to the C-suite and be like, let me run you through the app line by line and the code, right? And that is what SEOs do when you bring a table to a meeting like that. Like just think about how you would do it in another discipline, and that's your answer in terms of how to present that information.
For sure. Well, I want to spend some time talking about SGE. Before we get to that, there were a couple of questions in the chat. Apologies, I haven't had a chance. So Jesse was asking, Dana, I think you were talking about this. So you were saying something about seeing a spike in impressions in Search Console related to rank tracking. Can you just clarify that?
Yeah. You should see impression changes due to rank trackers, because that's an impression. Because the rank tracker had to Google the thing to come up with the search results. So it shows up as an impression. So when you go into your Google Search Console, obviously you're looking at it by day, by default. Just check and see if there's like consistently, is Tuesday randomly suddenly a big spike for no good reason. I mean, there are some industries that have spikes in certain days, like bankruptcy attorneys, for example, will have big spikes on Mondays. And it's a really common known thing in the industry because everybody had a great weekend and now they have to go bankrupt, right? And that's just like, it's been like that for years. I started working with a bankruptcy attorney 15 years ago. It's been true since then up until now. But other industries, you may not have a big like day spike on when things happen. And if you see an unusual spike in Google Search Console, impressions specifically, obviously not clicks, on a certain day, it's probably a keyword that people are tracking in their rank tracker, especially if it's something like really long and weird, then it might just be the rank tracker, and that's what's going on there. And
it could be your own rank tracking that's doing it.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great point. Had not considered that. Cool. And then we had a question from Garrett, by the way. Hey Garrett.
Hey Garrett.
Here. I'm not sure the context of this. I think this came in a while ago. So Garrett, feel free to pop in, or maybe, I don't know, Cyrus, if you remember this specific point. He said, what does better mean to you?
I have no idea, Garrett.
Okay, yeah, me either.
I'm sorry. I wish we knew what we were, maybe we were talking about search results or,
yeah, maybe.
Yeah,
I don't really know, but I think to address this as a user, how quickly and accurately and satisfied are we getting our answers? And I know Google tracks this to the nth degree, but we all have our personal preferences, and Google also has competing business interests with delivering, the best search results. It's hard. It's hard. It better mean something different to everybody, but I don't know. I'm just going to stop talking.
Oh, here we go. He answered. Better questions. There you go.
Do you think QRG are a good source of quality? Okay, so we're talking about quality rating, which we can get into maybe towards the end here if we have time. But yeah, fair question. Quick thoughts on that, Cyrus?
Yeah, the quality rater guidelines. So I worked as a quality rater for like a year. They just laid me off last month because they fired all the unionized workers in North America. Unionized workers who made $15 an hour. But anyway, enough about that. So yes, and the reason I wanted to become a quality rater is because I wanted to understand how the quality raters were actually evaluating websites, because I think there's a lot of evidence that Google feeds those scores into their machine learning models, and that's how they create these quality algorithms, both manually and with machine learning. So I do think it's a good source of truth, and it helps you working as a quality rater and using the quality rater guidelines. It turns off your SEO brain, because Dana was talking about a relative looking at search results. That's kind of how quality raters work. It's like you're showing your mom a website, and your mom is asking, "Can I trust this website?" "Yeah, mom, it's Amazon. They're probably going to deliver the package. This is the Mayo Clinic. Yeah, you can pretty much trust this website. This website looks a little scammy," and that's how they train you to work as a quality rater. So I think it's much more simple than what most SEOs think about quality. It's just can you trust? So it was a really good experience, and I do recommend people use the quality rater guidelines as a guidepost.
Yeah, funny you should mention that. It's actually my father-in-law is the one who's the website user but he also has a really bad habit of buying things off of Facebook ads, and then they never show up. And he's like, "I don't know why." I'm like, "Oh, Mike, I don't know why that didn't show up." So yeah, every Christmas he's like, "This gift just didn't arrive." It's become like a funny running joke at this point. But yeah.
Oh, love it. All right, so let's talk about the other big thing that's on everyone's mind. Crystal, what's happening with Google SGE?
So SGE is interesting because I live in the UK. I'm American, but I live in the UK, so we don't have it a lot in our SERP, which is really
We don't have it
fascinating.
either in
Right.
Canada. Yeah.
So it's really interesting. And I think that when they're talking about when's it going to roll out, how's it going to roll out, I think that's part of the thing. Like, I think that's part of it, is that it's really tricky for them to implement it in some of the other regions of the world, because of things like GDPR and lots of other like data protection requirements in some of these spaces. I have been using Gemini, which I think is a little bit of a proving ground for SGE, and I've been using Copilot on Bing, and I think that from my experience there, what I tend to find is that if I cannot find and Copilot is less intrusive. So Copilot is like an opt-in. So sometimes they'll have a little thing on the side that you can ignore. And then sometimes you can just go click the Copilot, and then it brings you a drop down and it gives you the information. So, so what it will do, so in that experience as a user, what I find is that if I cannot find the answer from the SERP, then I will go to Copilot to give me a summary, or get me started, because sometimes you're searching for something and you don't even know what you're searching for. Like, I had a problem with a router, we got a new Wi-Fi box, and like I just wasn't getting the Wi-Fi where I needed it. It's like, why isn't this working? And I've been on a million forums and none of them had the answer. And SGE can sometimes, or not SGE, but like a sort of generative search can give you sort of tools when you don't even know which questions you need to ask, which I think is interesting. And I think that as far as search goes, I think it's really interesting in that it changes the user journey for search, because what you will find, like we were talking about houseplants, because Dana has a million houseplants apparently, and Cyrus has one that's hanging on, but we were talking about houseplants, and I was trying to figure out how to save my spider plant, like you've got there, and I found that there was one website that kept showing up as the answer in the generative search. And at that point I was like, well, I'll just go to that website because they clearly have all the answers that I need. And I think that that's interesting of seeing where you can fit in those journeys and where you can learn more about that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's
And that
right.
actually brings me to what I was thinking about. So Bernard at ClearScope, I don't know if people are familiar with ClearScope. It's a great tool, but Bernard just wrote a fantastic post. I looked at it was on April 2nd. I'm sure he didn't publish it on the 1st on purpose, about ranch style SEO. And so if people haven't read this, I really do recommend that you read it, because I love that he's given a name to it, which is the idea that we used to have these pages of like, here's 18 things you need to know about your spider plant. And instead it's more, my spider plant has brown tips on its leaves. What am I doing wrong? So the idea of ranch is that you have these little articles of like brown tips on leaves. How often do I water? When do I need to fertilize? Instead of having one giant thing that's like the ultimate guide to spider plant care, right? And I think that Bernard really has a great answer there to what kinds of things are going to do well in generative search, which is those smaller pieces. That means you can pull out specific tips that are very relevant for that specific search. So if people haven't Googled that, just Google ranch style SEO and ClearScope. It'll come up. It's fantastic.
Agreed. I'll throw in my 2 cents specifically about SGE. I don't know what's going on with it, but 2 things we can predict is that it's going to become a better experience. It's incrementally getting better every few months, and we're going to incrementally see more of it in the SERPs. I think 3 years from now, it'll just be an everyday part of our lives. And Google has so much, market share right now. There is a threat from Microsoft, from ChatGPT, all these things. I don't know what's going to happen. It'd be interesting if Google loses 5 or 10% market share, which would be huge to these other tools. But I think it's going to move slowly enough that we'll have time to adapt. But it is going to become a bigger part of our lives.
Yeah. I just want to know how Google's going to monetize SGE. I think that's the big thing, from a Google perspective. Like, how are they going to make money on this? They haven't answered that well yet. And that's probably why they're moving so slowly on it.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say there was at least a report. I don't know the exact source, but there was speculation at least that they would charge for SGE, right? Wasn't that the headline like last week?
What they should do, if I was putting on my evil corporation hat, is I would say only places that have paid get to show up in SGE results. Ooh. So that would be, then you would have the right? Like that. I don't know. I'm sure someone at Google has suggested that. I can't be the first person to do that. But I was thinking this morning is like, what would be the way that Google could monetize this? And I was thinking all the different ways you could do it. And you'd be like, only paid results get in here or something like that. It's, yeah. Yeah, I don't know what they're going to do, but I mean, I think it is that trade-off, Cyrus. Like, if you lose 5% of your market share as Google, like, how much money would that cost them versus putting SG in more places and therefore losing 5% of ad revenue? Like, what's going to happen either way?
Yeah. I think also, like, bearing in mind, like the sheer magnitude of this update, both in time length and in like all of the impact that we've seen, and you pair that with the idea of like the SGE incoming. If you were to do like Google ads, like I remember I did an ad campaign on goggles, right? And I was like, yeah, we're going to bid on goggles, right? And I said goggles, but the ad campaign came back and they were showing my ad for beer goggles, ski goggles, goggles, like ski, like all these different things. And I was like, no, I didn't want any of that. They were swimming goggles, and you have to cut out you have to trim the fat on all of that stuff. If Google is doing something similar with what we're seeing in the SERPs, where they're cutting out websites that are full of junk, cutting out websites that are full of spam, cutting out websites that are not doing the best SEO, I think it will give them more ability to serve better results in the SGE, and to train the SGE on which things are good results. And also to minimize how much it costs for them to show the results, because the SGE at the moment is very expensive. It's a very expensive exercise. And ChatGPT has an opt-in or has a paid model, but that still doesn't cover the cost of the LLMs. So I think that they'll monetize it partially by saving money in the first instance. If the index is smaller, if they're reducing the index, then they can serve it better. And I think it'll be interesting to see how, but I think the two things are related anyway.
For sure.
I love the idea that the March update is actually just Google building a negative keyword list for SEO.
Basically, yeah. I mean, good. Yeah,
Beautiful.
essentially.
I love
Yeah,
it. It's March. What are we at now? March 47th,
Yeah.
and Google is still working on their negative keyword list for SEO. Yep. Mhm.
I love it. I love it. Well, we are just about out of time. So first of all, I want to say thank you all so much to our guests today. If you all have not already, pop over to Twitter or X or LinkedIn or wherever, find Crystal and Dana and Cyrus. Also want to invite you one more time to join us inside Top of the Funnel. Yesoptimist.com/tofu if I can find my banner. And we'd love to have you there. Real quick, final question for y'all. So Dana, you mentioned ranch style SEO, Bernard's article, which was fantastic. And my takeaway from that is that that's sort of like a bit of a response to SGE, right? So having this more bite-sized information potentially gives you more opportunity to rank for these specific queries and show up in these generated results. Anything else that you're recommending or seeing people do in response to SGE specifically?
I would say a lot of it right now is just like, let's wait and see what happens. This is, I mean,
Mhm.
I'm naturally a cautious kind of person when it comes to this newfangled stuff. So I think certainly, I mean, for me, it's more waiting and seeing, and then one day March will be over, and then we will know what the winners and losers truly were, and then we can start to make some decisions. So, if you have like a big site migration or something else coming up right now, maybe you want to just like delay a little bit. Like we have a big site migration project coming up for ourselves for a client. The website won't be done until I think, later on in a few more months from now, thank goodness. If it was right now, I'd be like, that's a big migration. I'm not 100% sure if we should push it right now. So that's part of my advice is maybe just like sit tight for a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Cyrus, what about you? What are you seeing?
And specifically, talking about AI, I think I'd leave people with the thought that the future of SEO content is content that can't be replicated by AI. So user-generated content, tools, plugins, expertise, video, anything original that Google is trying to gobble up for training data. You want to be the training data, and that's the future. So if your competitor can copy your content strategy word for word by firing up an AI tool, you're at high risk. So pivot now when you still have a chance to non-replicable. I'm stumbling over my words because I'm dehydrated. Sorry. Content that can't be replicated.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah. Beautiful. Crystal.
I think work on your entity. So LLMs like work on entities, like it's part of the way that they understand information. And I think that, while we're trying to figure out what's, where the things are going to land in terms of the SGE, it's a really good time to work on your brand entity. A good example I always use is like I entered the description for the Barbie movie into like a machine language, a language interpreter, and the entities that it pulled out was Barbie and Ken. Then they said that this is a fashion doll. Then I went into ChatGPT and I was like, can you name a fashion doll? And they were like, Barbie. Barbie is a fashion doll. Why? Because they understand that entity. Even though the Barbie movie description didn't say it was a toy or a doll, it understood that because Barbie was in close proximity to Ken, that I was talking about those two, that I was talking about the Barbie doll. Similarly, we say Wix, like Wix is a cloud-based CMS. And if you go into an LLM and say, can you name me a cloud-based CMS? One of the ones that they name is Wix. So if you go through and you're saying like, can you name me a swimming pool cleaner in Edmonton, and you're not on the list, then like that's a sign to you that you need to work on how you're making that entity there, because people are going to be asking those kinds of questions. So if you're not showing up in the LLM, think about how your entity is understood online. There's lots of ways to do that. Think about the knowledge panel and semantic SEO and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, that I think is a really good thing to invest in now.
Love that.
Totally. Yeah. I think right now we're all just figuring it out. So just gauge where you're at, and then you can have an action plan for how do we potentially improve that, right? Amazing. Well, thank you all so much once again for taking the time. Thanks everyone for joining us today. Thanks for your questions. That's it for the stream. I hope you all have a great day, and talk to you soon.
Thanks everybody.
Thank you.
See you, MozCon.